In this video, we will demonstrate adding simulation test benches to your design, which can be used to automatically simulate and test that your modules are working correctly. If we open up Vivado here and look at the sources pane, you'll see here a list of our design sources. In this case, we just have the 7segment.sv file. And anytime you create new system Verilog files that you intend to synthesize and place on the FPGA, they're always added to this section here. But if you look, there's another category here called simulation sources. And these are all of our source files that we want to simulate. Anytime we add a new file to the design sources here that we intend to synthesize, it will also be added to the simulation sources down here, because that just makes sense that those circuits that we want to place on the board, we will also want to simulate. But in this video, we're going to look at adding test benches. And test benches are unique Verilog files that aren't intended to be synthesized and placed on the FPGA, but rather they are just used to stimulate and check that our Verilog modules for synthesis are operating correctly. And so we're going to go through the steps here. Adding a test bench to your project is very similar to adding other sources that you've done in the past. We can hit the plus to add a source. But in this pop-up window, we are going to select Add or Create Simulation Sources, whereas in the past we've chosen Design Sources. We can hit Next here, and we'll browse and find the test bench file that we have downloaded from the course website. And we can hit Finish to add this to our project. What you'll see here, and we're going to this now shows up here under Simulation Sources, and we're going to expand this out, is that we now have the 7-segment test bench has been added to our project, and it's only found under Simulation Sources, not under Design Sources. And it has automatically organized this into a hierarchy. The test bench is going to instance our 7-segment module, and so it's found underneath the 7-segment test bench. And if you noticed there a second ago, Vivado automatically changed the test bench to be the top level. And you can see that because the test bench is in bold with this little top level icon beside it. Sometimes we don't necessarily want to simulate the test bench. We may want to just simulate some submodule. And so at any time we can always right click on the module we want to simulate and set it as top. And you'll see it changes here. And you should also notice that we can have different top modules for simulation as we have for design sources. And so you want to be aware of that as you work through your labs. Now in this case, we're going to go back and we're going to simulate the test bench. So we're going to switch the test bench back to top. And now to run this test bench and simulate it, we're going to, just like we ran simulation in the past, go over to the project, the flow navigator here, and hit Run Simulation, Run Behavioral Simulation. And this will set up the simulation environment for the 7-segment test bench. And you'll see here, if we look at the window, we have the test bench module, and also the 7-segment module that instances underneath it. And when we click on these different modules, we can see the different inputs, outputs, and internal signals that belong to each module. So as we expect, Vivado is automatically going to add all of the objects from our top level module to the waveform here on the right. Sometimes we may also want to view what's going on with signals in modules that aren't the top module but are instanced below. And so we're going to show you how to add those. And to keep my waveform more organized and to keep all these signals straight, I'm going to right click here and say New Divider. And that will just kind of help with the layout here and the visuals. And so I'll type here that this is going to be for our 7-segment module. And you can give it any name you like. And we can click on that module and we can bring over those signals from that. So now at this point, we're going to actually run the test bench, and we're going to do that by restarting the simulation here to move the time back to 0. And our technical console, we are going to run for 1 microsecond. And we don't actually need to do any add force for any of our inputs. The test bench is set up to do that for us, and that's really the purpose of our test bench, is to through this scripted test bench, it'll actually stimulate the inputs of our module. So I'm going to go ahead and run for the 1 microsecond, and we'll zoom out here and we can see the entire simulated design. What you'll also see is that if we make this window down here a bit larger, that when the test bench ran, it actually printed messages. And so it printed start of simulation, and then it checked that our 7-segment module is operating correctly at different times throughout the simulation, and it actually prints and makes note of those times. And finally, at the end, we can see that the simulation was done with 0 errors at time 700 nanoseconds. If we're interested in seeing exactly one of these times, for example, seeing that the segments were set to this value at time 400, we can go ahead and add a cursor to our design by right-clicking and selecting Go To. In the box that comes up at the top here, we can type in 400 nanoseconds. And you'll see the cursor is then moved to 400 nanoseconds, and we can zoom in if we like and view the signals at that time. If you encounter errors and your design is reporting, or the test bench is reporting that there are errors at specific times, you may want to use the same strategy of using the Go To in the menu to go specifically to the time where the error is and look at the signals in your design to see if you can locate the error.